Welcome to this video about control flow statements. This is what we are going to see in this video. I will explain how to change the order in a program or affect what is executed or not with what is called control flow statements. We will see two very used statements, the if and the switch. I will also include several examples and exercises for both, so you can get a better grip of how they work. As explained in the previous video, programs are a set of instructions that are executed in order, and this order can be modified in two different ways. We can specify blocks of code that will be executed or not depending on one or more conditions, and we can also repeat the execution of a block of code a number of times until one or more conditions are met. In this video, we will be focusing on the first type, to execute or not a block of code once depending on certain conditions. These statements are if and switch. So first, the if statement. The if can be used to decide if a block of code is going to be executed or not based on one or more conditions. So in the previous video, I was showing three instructions one after another, and here I am including an if for the second instruction. So the second instruction is only gonna be executed if the condition is fulfilled. In programming, we say that the condition is fulfilled when it's true and is unfulfilled when it's false. This will be easier to understand in the examples. So here in the left, we can see that first I am writing the if word. So this is going to be the keyword for this statement. It's going to be the if. And then the condition, then whatever is more intended here is going to be inside the if. And then we have the end if to say that the if isn't in there. So here, if the condition is true, instruction 2 will be executed. But if it's false, the program will skip it and jump to instruction 3 instead. One easy way to see this will be imagining if the condition is that it's sunny outside. So if it's sunny outside, then, and we can say that instruction is something like go for a walk. So if it's sunny outside, then go for a walk. And this will only happen when it's sunny outside. And before jumping to the examples, we need to cover the comparison operators. These operators are used in the conditions. The operators are less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and not equal to. How to write the equal to and not equal to operators may be different in different programming languages, and you will get used to these operators quickly once you start using them. So let's see the first example. Here I'm going to use the less than, and I want to check if A is less than B. And if that's the case, then we will print A is less than B. So here we are using the print keyword from the previous lessons as well as the variables. First, I am going to give values to A and B, for example, 1 and 3. We can see it here. So A equals 1 and B equals 3. Then here, I am checking if A is less than B. This is how we write this in code using the less than operator. And to write these expressions, we can translate directly from natural language. So we write first the A, then the less than operator, and then B. Remember that the side the operator is pointing to is less than the other side. And then, if the condition is true, we will print A is less than B, and we end the if block. So this print will only happen when A is actually less than B. And you can see that I have indented here the block of code that goes inside the if. This is usually done also when programming, and will help you see better which lines are affected by the if. In this specific case, A is actually less than B, because 1 is less than 3, so the print will happen and we will see A is less than B. But now I have changed A to B5. In this case, the condition wouldn't be true anymore, because A is not less than B. So in this case, the print wouldn't happen. Now, for the second example, I'm going to use the less than or equal to operator. The only difference between this one and the previous one is that the condition is true when A is less than B, as well as when A and B are equal. So this operator also treats as true when A and B are equal. As we saw before, when A is 1 and B is 3, A is actually less than B. So this gets executed. And then on the right, we can see that A and B have the same value. So in the previous case, because it was only checking if A was less than B, this wouldn't be executed. But in this case, because we are using less or equal to, this print will get executed because A and B are both 3. In the same way, we can check if B is greater than A. In this case, we are using the greater than operator, but we are doing exactly the same thing we were doing before in the first example. So now we have that A is equal to 1, B is equal to 3, and we are checking if B is greater than A. And if it is, then print B is greater than A. In this case, B is actually greater than A, so the print will get executed. Now, this may be confusing at first, but I want you to know that saying A less than B is the same as saying B greater than A. So here we can see it with numbers. We can see that saying is 1 less than 3 is the same thing as saying is 3 bigger than 1. Jumping into the next example, here we are going to see the equal to operator. So in this case, if A and B are equal, we are going to print A and B are equal. Now we are storing two strings in A and B. We can see that the strings in A and B are the same. As A and B are equal, the condition would be true, and the print will be executed, and we will see the message A and B are equal. So here in A, we have, this is the fourth example, and we have the same in B. So when we check in the if A is equal to B, we are going to see that they actually are equal. So the print will get executed. And if A and B were not equal, the print wouldn't get executed. I'm using here two strings just to let you know that you can also compare strings. And you can actually compare all the data types we have seen before. And now let's see the not equal operator. So here, if A and B are not equal, we are going to print A and B are not equal. I am back to using numbers just because it's shorter to write here. And we have that A is equal to 10, B is equal to 5. And then we are checking if A and B are different. Then print A and B are not equal. In this case, A and B, as we can see here, are different. So this condition will be true and the print is executed. But if A and B were the same, then this condition will be false because they will be the same and the print wouldn't be executed. Now we are going to see the if, else, if, and else statements. So when using an if statement, you can also use else if and else to add more conditions and blocks of code to be executed for each condition. So we have here if condition 1, then block of code 1. This block is only executed when condition 1 is true. And this is what we have been saying before in this video. Now we are adding something new. We have here an else if, and we are writing else if condition 2, then block of code 2. This program would only check if condition 2 is true when condition 1 was false. So the flow is to check first the condition in the if condition 1, then execute this, but else, so if this wasn't true, if this was false, else if condition 2, then block of code 2. So this block of code can only get executed when condition 2 is true, but condition 1 had to be false. And this happens because if condition 1 is true and this block of code 1 gets executed, when it's done doing this, the program will jump directly out of the if. So if condition 1 is true, we won't even check the else if condition. And finally here, I have added the else part of the if statement. The else will cover all other cases that are not covered by the if and else if conditions. So if condition 1 and condition 2 are false, these two here, condition 1 and condition 2 are false, then the program will go to the else and execute this block of code inside the else. So for the else to get executed, we need condition 2 to be false and also condition 1 to be false. Because as I said before, if condition 1 is true, this code is executed and then we go to the end if directly. Else, if condition 2, if this is true, then the block of code is executed and we go again directly to the end if once that is done. But if condition 1 and 2 are false and we have the else, then this block of code 3 will get executed, and then the if ends. This may be a bit complicated to understand the first time you see it, but here we can see it in a flow diagram. First, it checks the condition 1 in the if, and if it's true, then it will execute the block of code 1, and it will go directly here, following this line, to the end if. But if it's false, then we will go to the else if condition 2. And if this condition here, condition 2, is true, we execute block of code 2, and then we go directly again to the end if. But if condition 2 is false, then we have the else. And the else doesn't check anything, it doesn't have a condition. The only condition to reach the else is that condition 1 was false and also condition 2 was false. So in this case, we just execute the block of code 3 and then we reach the end if. If statements can contain only the if section, as we saw in the first examples, but they can also look like these three structures. We can see here in the left that we have the if condition, then else if, and in the end the else. But you will notice that I have put this in the middle, another else if condition n. And this is because you can add as many else if as you want in an if statement before writing the else if you need the else in your if. In the middle, we have if condition, and then directly the else without an else if in the middle. This is because you don't need to put an else if in the middle here. You can use directly if and then else. And here, if the condition 1 is true, then we execute the block of code 1. And if it's false, it will go directly to the else and execute the block of code 2. And then on the right, we have if condition 1 then, else if condition 2 then, and then end if. So in this case, we are not using the else to catch all other cases. So here, if condition 1 is true, the block of code 1 is executed. Else, so this means that the condition 1 was false. If condition 2 is true, then the block of code 2 gets executed, and then we end the if. Now, let's get into some examples to understand this. First, I am going to cover the if-else case. Here, we are first storing 1 in the num variable, so num is equal to 1. Then, we are checking if the number is even in the condition here. And if the number is even, then we print the number is even. Else, we print the number is odd. So we can see that the num being even is checked first, and the print is executed if it's true. But the second part, as we explained before, only happens if the condition in the if was false. In this example, because num is 1, when it checks if the number is even, we will see that actually it's not. So the condition here will be false, and the if will go directly to the else and print the number is odd. If we want to make it look more like real code, we could use the modulus operator that was explained in the previous video. This operator gives us the remainder in a division. As we can see on the right, the only possible outcomes when doing num modulus 2 are 0 and 1. If the remainder when dividing num by 2 is 0, it means that the number is even. That's the reason why we are writing num percentage or modulus 2 equals to 0 in our if condition. Else, if the remainder is not 0, then the number is an odd number. So we can see here on the right that 1 modulus 2 is equal to 1, because when dividing 1 by 2, the remainder is 1. But when dividing 2 by 2, the remainder is 0. So in this case, because num is equal to 1, we are doing 1 modulus 2, and we are checking if that is equal to 0. As we see on the right, that's actually equal to 1. So this program will execute the block of code inside the else and will print out the number is odd. This is a different example. In this one, we are going to use the if and else if, but it doesn't use an else case. Remember that the else case is not always needed, and you can use only the if by itself as well as the if and else if together, like in this example. Here, we are storing 1 in the variable num again, and then in the if, we are checking if num is equal to 2. This condition is false because num is equal to 1. So the program will go to the else if and check if num is equal to 1. This is indeed true, and because it is, it will go inside the block of code and print the number is 1. However, if I change num to be equal to 2, the first condition here would be true because num is now equal to 2. So basically we are saying if num is equal to 2, which is true, then we print the number is 2, and the program will go directly after that to the end if line. And now let's try out some exercises. For this one, I would like you to think which print will get printed out if we executed this code. I am giving some time here in case you want to stop the video and think about it, and next I will explain which one and why. Okay, so this program would print out the number is less than 5, which is inside the initial if. This is because the program will check first if num is less than 5, which is true, since num is equal to 1. Since the condition is true, the block of code inside that if would get executed. In this case, the only thing in that block is the print, so we would print the number is less than 5. After that is printed, the code would jump directly to the end if without checking the else if case. So this is the second exercise. In this one, I want you to write the if. So this program needs to print out that the number is positive when the variable num is positive and print out that the number is negative when the num is negative. We consider 0 as a positive number. As before, stop the video here if you want to give it a try before I show the solution. So now let's see what is the solution. First, you need to write if num is greater than or equal to 0, then. And this is because positive numbers are equal to or greater than 0. As we said, 0 is going to be considered as a positive number. If this comparison is true, then the print num is positive will get executed. If it's not true, that means that the variable num is less than 0. And the program will execute the print inside the else, which in this case would print that the num is negative. So next exercise. In this one, you need to write a program that will compare two numbers, num1 and num2, and you need to print out which number is bigger, or print they are equal if they are. You can stop the video now to give it a try, and I will explain the solution next. This is my solution. First, I am checking if num1 is bigger than num2, and if it is, I am printing out num1 is bigger. Else, if num2 is actually bigger than num1, then I am printed out that num2 is bigger. If neither of them is bigger than the other, it means that they are equal. And in that case, this program will go into the else case and print out they're equal. So to recap, if num1 is bigger than num2, we print it. This else will only happen if num1 is not bigger than num2. So here we check if actually num2 is bigger than num1. And if it is, we print it. And then the else will only be reached if num1 is not bigger than num2, but also num2 cannot be bigger than num1. This means that these two numbers are the same. And then in the else, we print that they are equal. This is not the only way to write this solution. Now I will show you another two ways that you may have thought about when solving this exercise. In this variation, first, you can check if num2 is bigger than num1, and then check if num1 is bigger than num2. And then we have the else like in the previous solution. So the only thing we are changing really is the order. First, we check if the num2 is bigger, then we check if num1 is bigger. If neither of them is bigger than the other, then they are equal, and we print it. And this is another variation. Here, first, we check if the numbers are equal, and print it if that's the case. If they are not equal, we check if number 1 is bigger than number 2. If number 1 is actually bigger than number 2, we print that number 1 is bigger. Else, we print that number 2 is bigger. This is because if they are not equal, and number 1 is not bigger than number 2, then number 2 must be bigger than number 1. In this solution, we could also check if number 2 is bigger than number 1 in the else if, instead of checking if number 1 is bigger than number 2. So if we do that, if we put here number 2 is bigger than number 1, the only thing we will need to change here is what we are printing. So number 2 would be bigger, and then else number 1 will be bigger. And now we are going to see a new thing, which is called nested if statements. If statements can be part of the block of code inside an existing if statement. This is called nested if statements. Here, for example, we have an if checking for condition 1, and then block of code 1 inside that if. Block of code 1 can contain another if checking for its own condition, like the one on the right. And this is how it would really look like if we put it together. These nested ifs can also have else if statements, as well as else statements, just like the ones we have seen previously. In this course, you can also differentiate if statements by how deep they are indented. So we see here the first if with condition 1, and then the second if is indented, which means that it's inside the block of code of the first if. In this case, if condition 1 is true, then the program will go inside the if. And inside the if, we will have if condition 2 is true, then block of code 2. End the if inside, and then end the outside if. In this example, we are going to show the combo the user has in a game. In a game, a combo represents the number of hits done by the player to enemies without stopping. If the combo is greater or equal to 50, we will call it a super combo. Anything below 50 will be called great combo. In this example, the combo can be shown as text or as a number depending on the format chosen. So first, we are going to check the format to see if the user wants to see it as text or as a number. Here, in the example, we are going to say that the format is equal to text, so the user wants to see it in the text form, and then the combo is 90. First, we check for the format in the first if here. If the format is text, it will keep checking for the combo number. However, if the format is not text, we can just print the combo number in the screen, which is inside the last else. The if and the else that are highlighted here go together, and everything between them will be what we called previously block of code. As we can see, the nested ifs only appear when the format is text. In this case, we need to check if the combo is a super combo or a good combo. For this, we first check if the combo is greater or equal to 50, since our rules said that any combo equal or greater to 50 would be called a super combo. So here we have that if combo is greater or equal to 50, then we print super combo. Else, we know that the combo must be under 50, so we print the message good combo. So in this case, the program will print out super combo since the format is text and the combo is 90. Okay, we are done with the if statements now, and I will explain the switch statement. Switch statements can be used to decide if a block of code is going to be executed or not based on if a variable is equal to a certain value. As we see here, the switch is formed by the switch line and the cases. We are going to write it like this in this course. In the first line, we have the switch with the variable name. We will compare the value of this variable with the value indicated in each case. There is a final case called default that will work the same way an else works in an if statement. So if the variable is not equal to any of the values in the cases, the default block of code will get executed. So in summary, to compare the variable to different values, we create cases. Each case will compare the variable to a value, and if the variable is equal to the value, then the block of code for that case will get executed, and the switch statement will end. We can transform the switch to an if to understand better how it works. Since we have already seen the if statement before, the first case in the switch will be the initial if on the right. Next, we have an else if for each case that comes after that. Finally, we have the else case to match the default case in the switch. So, the first case in the switch will be translated to if variable name is equal to value 1 in the if on the right. Then, we will have the block of code for that if and an if else for the second case in the switch. Again, we compare if the variable name is equal to a certain value. In this case, value 2. If it is, it will execute the block of code 2. Finally, if the variable name wasn't equal to any of the previous cases, we have an else executing the block of code for the default case on the left. Switch statements will always compare if a variable is equal to a certain value. So these statements don't use the other comparison operators we have seen before, like less than or greater than. Here, we can see in a flow diagram how the switch statement works, just like we did previously with the if. First, on top here, we have the switch variable name. So this is the variable we will be comparing against the cases. Then we have the first case value 1. So this value will be the one compared to the variable. If the value is equal to the variable, then it will follow this path because it's true. The program will execute the block of code 1 and then go directly following this to the end switch, so the other cases are not checked and the default is not executed. However, if the value is not equal to the variable, then it's false, and we go to the next case, which is case value 2. If this value is equal to the variable, again we go through the true path to the block of code 2. When this is done, we go to the end switch. But if the variable is not equal to value 1 or value 2, then we keep going down to the default case. Here, we don't need to check anything, we just execute the block of code for the default and then end the switch. So as we can see, when a switch finds the value that is equal to the variable, it doesn't even continue checking all the other cases, and the default is not looked at. It goes directly to the end switch, just like it happened with the if, else if, and else. Let's see how it works with an example, since it will be easier to understand. Let's suppose what we want to do in our code depends on a color. What we do will be different if the color is blue, green, red, or any other color. We will store the color in a variable named color. And here we have the switch. Since color is the variable we want to compare to different values, we will write switch color here. So after that switch color, we have the first case. In this case, we are checking if color is equal to red. If it is, it will execute the block of code for red and then end the switch. But as we can see here on the top, color is actually equal to blue. So this block of code is not executed and it checks the next case. In this one, we have the value blue. So because color is equal to blue, this case is true. And the switch will execute the block of code for blue. Once this block of code is done, it will jump directly to the end switch. So the other case and the default are not even checked. If this wasn't the case, if the color wasn't blue, then it will check green, and if it wasn't green either, it will go directly to the default and execute it. But because we have found already the case we were looking for, it will not keep going down in the switch. It will go directly to the end switch after executing the block of code. And this is how it would look like if we use an if. First, we have the initial if to check if the color is red, here. So for the first case, we check if color is equal to red. Then we execute the block of code for red. This is the same. Then we are using the else if to check the second case, if color is equal to blue. And then we have the block of code for blue. And we do the same thing for the third case here. Case green, we check if color is equal to green, and then execute the block of code for that one. As I said before, the default in a switch works as an else in an if. So if all the conditions in the if, else if are false, the else gets executed. And in the switch, if the values in the cases are not equal to the variable in any of the cases, then the default gets executed. And then we have the block of code for the default and end the switch and if. Now let's try an exercise. Here, I want you to use a switch statement to print the day of the week depending on which number is stored in a variable called day. 1 will be Monday, 2 Tuesday, 3 Wednesday, 4 Thursday, 5 Friday, 6 Saturday, and 7 Sunday. You can stop the video here to try it before I explain the solution. And this is the solution. In this example, day is equal to 3, as we can see here on the top. As I said, we are going to use a variable called day to store which day of the week it is. And now we have the switch day. So the variable we are going to compare against the cases is day. And then we have case 1. So the value we are going to compare day against is 1, which we said is Monday. In this case, day is not equal to 1, so we don't print is Monday. As day is not equal to 1, the switch will keep going, and it will check if case 2 is equal to day. It's not, because day is 3, and this case is looking for 2. So it's not Tuesday either. Then it keeps going, and in this case, the value is 3, and we will check if 3 is equal to day. And we see that it actually is, because day is equal to 3. So we print it's Wednesday. And then, after this is executed, the program will go directly from there to the end switch. So case 4, 5, 6, and 7, and also the default, are not even looked at. As we said, in this case, the day is 3. So we go into this case, and this is printed out. So the way the switch works is compare all the values in the cases, one by one, to the variable. If it finds which value is equal to the variable, does the block of code inside that case, and ends the switch. However, if none of these cases is equal to the variable, then it would go to the default and print not a day of the week. So imagine if day was 9 or 10, it will go through all this, check all of this, realize that it's actually none of this, go to the default and print not a day of the week. And this is it for the if and switch statements. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and feel free to reply to questions if you know how to answer. Also, feel free to comment in this video if this was useful to you in any way. It helps me understand if this is actually helping anyone. In the next video, I will cover the for loops. See you in the next video.